A coalition of Democratic state attorneys general is now suing to block President Trump's executive order to place new rules on mail-in voting, which they argue would unilaterally change how Americans can cast their ballots. New York Attorney General Letitia James put it bluntly, saying, quote, "Free and fair elections are the cornerstone of our democracy, and no president has the power to rewrite the rules on his own." That lawsuit comes in addition to a separate legal challenge filed by Democratic Party leadership, which also argues the president has no such authority to order his sweeping change to elections. It's the opening salvo in what could become a major legal fight after the president doubled down this week on false claims about mail-in voting, his favorite excuse for why he lost the 2020 election.
The cheating on mail-in voting is legendary. It's horrible what's gone on. And it's very clearly covered, very, very clearly. So I think this will help a lot with elections.
Here's the reality. Despite years of those claims, there is still no credible evidence that vote by mail is plagued by fraud. According to the Brookings Institution, in the last 4 general election cycles, just 4 out of every 10 million mail-in ballots were found to be fraudulent. To put those odds in perspective, it's roughly 15 times more rare than dying in a lightning strike. And yet, despite that reality, the president is now attempting to use federal power to reshape how ballots are cast just months before voters head to the polls. Joining us now is the founder of the Fair Fight Voting Rights Group and former Georgia gubernatorial candidate, Stacey Abrams. Ms. Abrams, welcome to the weekend.
Thank you for having me.
So the president's executive order on voting is problematic on a whole host of levels. But let me put up this story from the New York Times from Tuesday, which is basically a background on what the president's EO would actually do. And I'm going to read this. It directs the Department of Homeland Security to create state citizenship lists based on data from citizenship and naturalization records, Social Security records, and other federal databases. The order directs federal officials to send the list to state election officials and orders the Attorney General to prioritize prosecution of election officials who provide federal ballots to ineligible voters. Simple question, Stacey, how illegal is this?
It is patently illegal, and it is entirely in the playbook of voter suppression that Republicans, including Donald Trump, have been using for the last decade or so. In fact, in 2018, one of the hallmarks of the race that I ran for governor was that the state was using what was called an exact match system that was so flawed that more than 50,000 voters had their applications to participate in elections held hostage by the then Secretary of State and soon-to-be governor. That was following a similar problem that we sued him for in 2016, where a federal court said that he had illegally held almost 35,000 electors away from the ability to participate. And here's the problem. The databases they're referring to are not accurate. When they tried this in Missouri, they had a 34% failure rate. When they did this in Texas, in one county, they found a failure rate in excess of 14%. The data does not match. It is why we have a state-by-state process, because the federal systems are not designed for this purpose. And when it is flawed, real people who should have a voice in our democracy are excluded, and that is wrong.
And Stacey, I actually have a quick follow-up to this executive order. In a state that has essentially been ground zero for Donald Trump's litigation and fight to undermine free and fair elections, are you seeing any sort of chilling effect when it comes to the current election apparatus and efforts to recruit election administrators to make sure that November and 2028 go smoothly?
Absolutely. We know that we have to look at the arc. Eddie Glaude in your last segment referred to the arc of history, but let's think about the arc of voter suppression. In 2020, we had the most accessible election in American history because we finally used all of the apparatuses available to allow voters to be heard. And what they are attempting to do is to systematically dismantle those capacities. One of the ways they did so in 2022 was that across the country, any state that was able to use private funding to shore up the underfunded election protection security systems in these states, a lot of counties had to go and get private funding because the state wasn't giving them enough money. Well, it's now illegal in most southern states and across the country to accept that private money. So when we think about what they're demanding, they're saying, do not run your elections properly, and you cannot go and find the money to make it work. And then if you look at the SAVE Act and at the executive order, the attempt is also to say to election workers, if you make a mistake, you can be criminally prosecuted. So there's a chilling effect on voters who are accused of fraud. There's a chilling effect on election workers who are accused of criminal malfeasance. And there's a chilling effect on America, who starts to believe that our elections are not our own. And that is wrong. We have safe and secure elections when we do not have voter suppression, when you can register and stay on the rolls, when you can cast a ballot, and when that ballot can be counted. And as Jonathan pointed out at the top of the story, the likelihood of voter fraud is so infinitesimal that the Heritage Foundation, which has basically spent its lifetime trying to prove it, has had to admit that it does not happen. But voter suppression is very real. And in elections that are decided on the margins, voter suppression comes together, whether it's ending mail-in voting, using citizenship proof, although every citizen you have to prove your citizenship to get on the rolls today. These more restrictive policies all come together to make it harder for average people to be heard. If you're a senior, if you're rural, if you're disabled, if you're a student, if you're a person of color, those are 5 populations that when these bills and these rules and these executive orders come to fruition, shave enough points off of elections that Republican authoritarians can game the outcome.
Peter Abrams, you brought up Eddie Glaude. I'm going to go back to something else he said about the social contract and about us taking care of each other. You were just in Dilley, Texas, which, as the people that watch this show know, is where they're holding many undocumented, possibly documented, we have no idea, folks down there, and many of them children. You wrote a Substack, and you wrote that children are sleeping on metal bunks. The food has mold and worms. There's a little girl who has developed COVID, RSV, and pneumonia all at the same time. ProPublica in February wrote about the children of Dilley. And I want to read this to you. 13-year-old Gustavo Santiago said he didn't want to go back to Mexico. I have friends, school, and family here in the United States, he said of his home in San Antonio, Texas. To this day, I don't know what we did wrong to be detained. He ended with the plea. I feel like I'll never get out of here. I just ask that you don't forget about us. When you hear that from a child, 13-year-old, what does that say about where we are as a country? And I think what you're also very good at is helping people understand what they can do about it.
So what it says is that we've lost our way and we are in danger of losing our humanity. And let's be clear, we call it detention. These children are in prison. I stood outside the gates, in fact, the fencing, and you could see the trailers. You can see that these are children and their families that are being held in prison camps, all in the name of protecting Americans. What protection do we need from an 18-month-old with RSV and pneumonia because she could not get a doctor because they gave her ibuprofen? What is happening is that authoritarians want us to forget our humanity and forget our power and our agency. And what we have to do, the reason we're doing this work, the 10 Steps campaign, is about reconnecting us to what they do to harm us, which is to lie, to do the propaganda, and to scapegoat the most vulnerable. But then our steps to freedom and power include sharing the truth, holding ourselves accountable, and lifting up the fact that they can flood the zone with propaganda, we can flood the zone with truth. And so we're excited to be in partnership with the National Domestic Workers Alliance, SEIU, AFT, NEA, and dozens of other partners. And we're asking citizens to flood the zone with the truth. We are incarcerating children. We are torturing babies in the United States in 2026. And so what we need you to do is read them home. We want you to film yourself reading a book, put it on social media, and hashtag read them home. Congress can end this tomorrow. The president can end it if he is held accountable. But I'm not waiting for that to happen. If we want to take the No Kings protest from the streets back to the people who need to be held accountable, this is one way someone who wants to do something can. Step 2 in the 10 steps to freedom and power is that we share what we know. And so we want everyone to join the Read Them Home campaign so that these children in Dilley and nationwide, because Dilley is the most egregious example, but this is happening across the country, and it's coming to a neighborhood near you with the warehouses they're trying to build. These aren't warehouses for criminals. These are warehouses for families and children, and that is wrong.